Planning Commission meeting of the City of the Royal Oak to order. Before we start, let's call order. Introduce ourselves, starting to my left.
Gary Casada.
Charlene Douglas, Mayor Pro Tem.
Mike Fournier, Mayor.
Ian Vara.
Tim Twing, Community Development Director.
Jeff Chase.
Dan Godek.
And Eric Klooster just joined us. Okay, next item for business is the approval of the minutes for February 13th, 2018. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Godek, support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Chase. Any discussion on these minutes? Not seeing it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Next item is item C. This is public comment on non-agenda items. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on a non-agenda item? Okay, not seeing. We'll close the public comment on non-agenda items and move to item D. This is new business. This is a site plan. SP 180307 to construct a one-story, 6-unit industrial building for contractors' offices at northwest corner of Leafdale Blvd and Parmenter Blvd. Mr. Twing.
This site is zoned general industrial. As you indicated in the lead-in, it is a proposed one-story or 24-foot-high industrial building. They've broken it up into potentially 6 different units with a first floor area of approximately 8,300 square feet, and then mezzanines of another 2,600 square feet for a total of slightly more than 10,900 square feet. The site plan does depict 23 total parking spaces, with 6 of those inside the proposed units. They do have access from Leafdale, as well as or outside refuge enclosure proposed in the corner of the site. In terms of staff's recommended contingencies, we've identified, since it's no specific tenants at the present time, item 1, that all the permitted uses would be those allowed in general industrial, with no more than a requirement for 1 parking space for every 400 square feet of usable floor area. We've also identified the landscape plan, which they have provided, and I would point out that there were no really existing trees on site in terms of that new provision. They are proposing to add 4 maple trees along with other landscaping as depicted on the site plan. If you're happy with that, it would just simply be an accepted site plan, and contingency 2 would be basically revised to indicate the Planning Commission is satisfied. The other contingencies listed are standard contingencies regarding any requirements for paving, right-of-way permits, that all exterior lighting and fixtures would comply, as well as signage. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Thank you, Mr. Twing. Any questions for Mr. Twing? May not see you. Is the petitioner here? Your name, sir?
Jim Schneider, Schneider Smith Architects. I'm here. Mr. Kelly, the property owner, is here as well. As always, Tim's done a pretty good job of outlining it, so I don't really have anything to add unless you've got some specific questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for, yes?
Thank you. You don't have any, looks like exterior lighting on the building that I see here. What are your plans for that?
There'll be some up-down lights on the front, you know, that'll just shadow the front facade, and we'll have probably wall packs on the back over the garage door, shielded lights. We're not going to have any pole-mounted lights or anything.
All right. And what kind of materials are on the building?
Cement block and steel siding, basically, and aluminum window frames.
Okay. The rear where the garage doors are, that's
Block.
That's block.
Yep.
All right. Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Ms. Douglas?
Just wanted to be sure they're putting sidewalk in here.
Yes.
Anything else? Okay. Okay, don't see anything, we'll just bring it back to the commission for discussion or a motion. Ms. Douglas?
Yeah, I'll move approval of the site plan as specified.
Okay, is there support for that?
Support.
Support by Mr. Casada, motion by Ms. Douglas, support by Mr. Casada. Any discussion on this?
I just want to say that when we were out here, 2 summers ago, deciding where to put in sidewalks where there were none, we decided to hold off on requiring a sidewalk here, knowing that there would ultimately be, it was a good location, and there'd ultimately be construction, and we'd make the builder install the sidewalk, and there was, and he did, and they will.
I bet.
Any other comments? Okay, so there's a motion and a support. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item is also another site plan 180308 to convert a bar lounge, the High Top Saloon into a hair salon at 25422 Woodward Avenue. Mr. Twain.
This is the High Top site. The site is zoned mixed use 2. As you indicated, they are proposing to convert it to a hair salon of some 3,400 square feet, which includes an addition to the east end of the building. It's a partial 2-story addition to the east end of the building. The site would have 23 parking spaces as identified, along and with a requirement of approximately 15 plus 1 handicap. In terms of the landscaping, there really is no existing trees or vegetation on the site. They are proposing at least to install 3 landscape areas with 3 trees indicated in that in terms of condition number 1. The remaining conditions that you see listed in the staff report are standard contingencies regarding right-of-way permits, compliance with lighting and lighting fixtures, removal of the freestanding sign, as well as compliance with the sign ordinance and bonds. It's also been brought to my attention there's the issue with the seal that was provided on the copy of the submission, and I believe the petitioner is intending to address that this evening for the Planning Commission.
Any questions for Mr. Twain? Would the petitioner please approach, give us your name, tell us about your project?
Antonio Craparota from the Pegasus Group. First of all, I'd like to address the issue with the seal. I spoke to Tim just before the meeting, and honestly, I'm embarrassed to have to come in and admit that I never followed up on the engineer's seal. I've been working with Chuck for like 15, 16 years, and when Chuck started to get sick, I started to work with Jerry, and I have him typically doing just the preliminary site plans for me, and I handle all the architectural design. So again, I'm embarrassed to have to admit I never followed up on it, and I don't have any reason to believe that that anyone would say his license isn't current if it is. So I tried to contact him. I just found out a couple hours ago, actually, when I got the email about it. So, and I haven't been able to reach him. But I can assure you that any revisions, any plans moving forward will all be sealed by a registered professional with their contact information on the title block.
Okay, would you like to tell us about your project?
Sure. And again, Tim had said it pretty well before. We're looking to convert the High Tops Bar into a hair salon, and I'm here with Roman Barrett, the owner. Basically, the only changes we're really making to the existing building, there's a rounded corner of the building that's on the southwest corner. We're squaring that off, adding a few feet to the south side of the building, but we're adding a second story on the rear portion of the building on the east side. That'll be used just for the owner's offices upstairs. Okay. So our biggest challenge with the building is configuring the parking out there because the site is so squirrely. We really need, 25 or 23 parking spaces, even though only, I think 15 are required. But we're trying to maximize the amount of parking we can get out there. So we have put in a few islands that we plan to landscape. And I assume the site plan approval will be contingent upon a landscape plan approval. But we have, again, we provided some elevations that have some of the preliminary design materials for the exterior, and the footprint of the building is going to remain the same, with the exception of just those two small areas that show the addition.
Okay. Before I bring it back to the commission for any questions for you, I want to ask Mr. Twing, because the issue with the seal has been brought to our attention, and we're hearing this tonight, are we allowed to proceed with this, with the notion that if they were to get approved, then they would bring the proper plans back to you? What would be your recommendation from a planning process?
Well, I would look at it as any other contingent, any other requirement under the zoning ordinance, and the zoning ordinance requires the appropriate seals, very much like the requirement to have a landscape plan submitted. So I would look at it in the sense of it is a requirement, and you could either add it as a contingency that the appropriate seals be added to it before it's processed further and before it's officially approved. It would be one of your contingencies. So you could add it as a contingency, and I think we've actually done that in the past. You may recall we've suggested on plans that didn't have a seal that they be included. So
Okay.
that's one option.
Okay.
If you preferred to see the seal, you could table it for a month and require that they be submitted to you with the appropriate seals, and we'd bring it back. So those would be, I mean, you can obviously reject it as well, but I think that's a little extreme for the request, but.
Okay, good. Thanks for, it gives us a couple of options here. So, okay, thank you. Is anything else before I open up for the commission for questions?
I don't think so, unless you have any questions for the owner, for the business owner.
Okay, do you have anything you'd like to add? If you do, could you come to the microphone, please?
My name is Roman Barrett. I opened up Pila Salon over by the ZMC building 4.5 years ago. I feel like the business has been very successful. The salon is growing. Saw the opportunity to purchase the High Tops Bar and basically create an environment, create a new building with, our design, something that looks really, really good. To create a high-end hair salon and help beautify Royal Oak.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, with that, questions for the petitioner. Mr. Casada?
I have a couple questions. I'm sorry, your name again? Antonio. Antonio, could you come up to the microphone? Okay, I heard you say that you performed the architectural design on this.
Yes,
Are you an architect?
I am not, I'm a designer.
Okay, and so who's Jerry? You mentioned Jerry. Who's that?
Jerry's a civil engineer that worked with Chuck Van Poperen.
And what's Jerry's name? Full name?
You know what, I'm hesitant to give you his last name, just until I find out from him exactly what his situation is with that seal, because I know he was working with Chuck, and, he was taking over for Chuck when he got sick, so.
Okay, but you did the design, so how does it work?
I did the architectural design, yes. Jerry only handled the site plan for me.
All right, and you're not willing to give me his last name?
I will eventually. I'd just like to talk, I apologize, I'd like to find out from him.
Do you know what
exactly
company he works for?
He worked with Chuck,
Okay.
with Chuck Van Poperen.
Okay, you ever meet Chuck?
Yeah, I worked with Chuck for probably 7-8 years before he got sick.
Okay, when was the last time you saw him?
Oh, geez, it was probably at least that long ago, probably 7-8 years ago, maybe.
Okay. How often do you have Chuck or Jerry seal your drawings?
Chuck did quite a bit for me, back, like I said, before he got sick. But honestly, maybe one or two small site plans a year.
Okay, now, I looked up Chuck, he appears to be dead, do you know that?
Yeah, yes.
Okay,
Yes. Like I said, Jerry took over for him once he got sick, and he took
Okay.
over his business. That's why I said,
Is
that's why I'm
Jerry a
hesitant.
licensed engineer?
I thought he was. I thought he took over for Chuck. So I never questioned the fact that he was using that seal. I thought they worked together. He used it. I assumed it was on the up and up.
Okay, well, very good, I've heard all I need to hear.
Thank you, Mr. Casada. Any other questions for the petitioner? Okay, not seeing any, we'll bring it back to the commission for discussion or a motion. Mr. Casada?
I move to reject the site plan.
Okay, there's been a motion by Mr. Casada to reject the site plan. Is there any support?
I'm going to support it.
Okay, so there's support by Mr. Chase. And any discussion on this motion?
Mr. Casada?
Oh, Mr. Casada, I'm sorry.
Just to explain myself, I mean, this issue has come up before. It's my position that the city of Royal Oak should, and this planning commission should enforce the laws of the state of Michigan, which are that architectural services should be provided by a licensed architect, and that engineering services by a licensed engineer. We have another case here where a person who is not an architect is submitting plans to the planning department, which is fine. The planning department's policy is to accept those, but by the time it gets this committee, our job is to protect the public health, safety, and welfare for reasons of public safety and also the aesthetics. It's my very strong position that only licensed architects should be presenting architectural plans to this commission. We don't have that here, and I strongly urge my colleagues to reject any petitioners who come up here who are not practicing legally, trying to sell us a plan.
Thank you, Mr. Casada. Mr. Chase?
I would like to explain, I supported it for a couple of reasons in my own mind. It's not to go against the planning department and accepting the drawings. That's not what the case is here. I'm a licensed building professional. I have to adhere to strict standards. I agree with Mr. Casada on certain aspects of it. I might not, this is a tough one. I don't think it's a bad plan. I think that me being held in my professional business and professional life to certain standards, I think we should uphold those to standards for things that come in front of us. And I just, I'll be in support of the motion, and I think something needs to be done. I'm not quite sure what. I'm not saying that anyone is to blame. It's a tough situation. It's a very fine line, but I do know when things happen with unlicensed professionals, bad things usually occur. And that's my standpoint, sorry.
Okay. Mr. Klooster?
Yeah, I'll echo that. Evidence suggests that the architectural design and the site plan was not prepared by a licensed professional or under the direct supervision of a licensed professional. So I can't support moving forward with this plan based on those parameters.
Ms. Douglas?
I'm just going to ask for a little education. And Mr. Klooster may have answered my question. I mean, if you have an architectural firm and you have a junior staffer who's done a design, but they are not yet licensed, the criterion is you may sign it if they have been working under your supervision.
Under the direct supervision of a
Under your
licensed
direct
professional,
supervision.
yes.
That's not what happened here, though.
Right, no, I've heard you say that. So if, just again hypothetically, someone who is a reasonably talented designer comes up, this gentleman has this thing, and goes to an architect, and an architect looks it over and says, yup, all legit, all right, all good, I sign it, they are in violation of their contract?
Yeah, they're in violation of
Or
the law.
the law? They have to have drawn it themselves.
It has to reflect their professional judgment. They have to be the party in responsible charge. They cannot review and seal. Review and seal is illegal.
So where is the line between me as a client, as a client drawing pictures? And, I mean, where does the line stop between somebody drawing pictures and somebody drawing illegally plans?
I'll step in. I'm a licensed builder. If I went and said I want to build a house that's bigger than, or a building, I would have to have a licensed architect do it. I could draw it and hand it to somebody, and by them signing it and sealing it and say it's to code, they accept the responsibility and all the liability for what happens on that site from there on in. And if I build it wrong, or if I say, hey, that guy signed it, then we both accept the responsibility. And if something bad happens, it happens a lot. There's been numerous sites around here that have had non-licensed professionals draw something. If they're a site plan or a space planner, they have to be done in-house. So there's architects around the city that have people draw it, but they're under the direct supervision of that architect, and he looks it over and signs it. It's different when that happens than compared to when someone takes it from one organization to another organization that was never in that same building, never saw it, never even looked at it, and just said, yep, that's good, pay me $500, you can use my stamp. People approach me all the time to use my building license because they can't do it. Oh, it's an easy project, it's just a little small addition, can you apply for a permit and get it for me? And then call for all the inspections and never come out there and never do it yourself, but if you get sued, it's your fault. That's where we're going.
Okay, good.
I have a clarification to make. You made a good point there that maybe everybody doesn't understand. Somebody can be talented, but to get an architectural license, you have to go through a tremendous amount of training and education and testing. You have to go through structural, you have to do, I've said this before, it's the second most rigorous license to get besides a doctor, a medical doctor. And there's a reason for it. And you mentioned somebody extremely talented, and extremely talented designers did the Center Street and Main Street lofts and the Troy Street lofts where the balconies fell down. Because he was extremely talented, he just wasn't an architect. He didn't know what the heck he was doing, okay? He knew how to make it look good, didn't know how to make it work, didn't know how to make it not leak, didn't know how to make the structures work. That's what that's why we have licensing.
Okay, thanks.
Mayor?
Just like to follow up, same question, but Mr. Twing, maybe Mr. Gillum, if you have any thoughts on the matter.
Well, I'll separate it, and we've had this conversation before. What you're dealing with here is site plan review and approval. You are not dealing with the construction of a building. These are not construction plans. They're not engineered plans. We simply have an ordinance provision that requires you, and it allows either an architect or an engineer, professional, to submit the plans. The unfortunate circumstance here is that this gentleman, this license doesn't seem to be in place. But under the zoning ordinance, it is allowed to have either or submit the whole complete packet. So we do accept plans for a building and or site as it's depicted from an engineer and or an architect. It's not separation of both, it's either or. And again, it's because what we're looking for and what you're reviewing here is compliance with the zoning ordinance. You are not looking at compliance with the building code. You are not looking at compliance with the stormwater detention code. That's why you see all of those contingencies every time on these site plans, is they still have to submit plans that comply with those codes to the appropriate departments. You're really dealing with, is this use allowed? Is it allowed here? Are the setbacks appropriate? Is the parking appropriate? Is the square footage and density? You're dealing with the zoning provisions on it. So I think that's the distinction between requiring a license to build a building, requiring a license to do engineering and stormwater design. That's not occurring on these plans. So unless you change the zoning ordinance to specify it that way, we're going to continue to accept it from either or. In this case, if you want to totally reject the plan because of the license or the seal, that's your prerogative as a board, and they can start over. As I said before, from a staff standpoint, if you wanted to punt it for a month, let them get the seals and come back to you and appropriate, then I don't think you're punishing the petitioner, because if you reject it, we're going to make them pay again, start over again. But that's up to you. It's your action. But I hope that kind of clarifies the planning department's position on what you're doing and the planning commission's role versus compliance with the state licensing law for an architect.
Mayor.
So just to make sure I have clarity, because I had a real late night last night, as did Commissioner Douglas. Our zoning ordinance, so when someone comes to apply to the planning commission, conceivably, they're reading the zoning ordinance and they're saying, okay, I'm doing a site plan. And I'm not seeing any structural drawings here that show load factors or anything like that. I'm just saying, okay, how's the building gonna load, or how's the building gonna be, and how are the parking spots gonna be on this plot of land? You were saying, okay, we'll accept a seal from an architect or an engineer to handle it in, or to bring it in. And then we look at it and we say, is this a good use of the land? Is it worth the variances, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. From there, if any of these plans are approved, they have their own due diligence they have to go through with their builder, with their architect, with building code and everything like that to assure that the property is built structurally sound. Things do slip through the cracks. People don't always follow the right processes, but those are often, if they meet building code and they do what they're supposed to do, that's gonna be, a civil matter. So I guess my issue is that supporting this motion is that if we have a zoning ordinance that tells petitioners to come to the city commission or come to the planning commission, we're in the ordinance, it's clear and explicit that you need only a seal from an architect or an engineer to submit it. And if we're rejecting that based on an argument of structural integrity and all of this, I have a little bit of uncomfortableness with this. I agree with Mr. Twing. If there's something we want to change as a planning commission, we should change it at the zoning ordinance. But I think right now, this applicant, regardless of whoever he hired to help him do his design, which gentleman's talented, could be, I don't know. But when I look at the site plan, I wouldn't want to punish the applicant for, I got to tell you, I don't know anything about building, or I shouldn't say planning because that would be a little embarrassing up here. But you know what I mean? I wouldn't know all the rules and everything if I were in the business of, serving others in the salon industry. That's why I would go out, I'd find somebody, they'd put together a project. And I think it's a little bit of a tough play here to reject the plan and make the ultimate petitioner who's trying to invest in Royal Oak, trying to do a good thing, been a good business owner, trying to expand his business in Royal Oak. I would think delaying it a month and letting them get their act together with the advice that has come from this table is probably a more prudent thing to do, because we're not, punishing a designer, we're punishing the petitioner, and I just don't see that to be equitable in this situation. And I side with Mr. Twing's recommendation to punt for a month, let them come back, and have a second shot at this, and based on the input and advice we've given.
Mr. Godek.
I agree wholeheartedly with the mayor's comments there. We've discussed this in the past a number of times, and I'm not comfortable with deciding on a plan based on who might be presenting it or who drew it. If that's in conflict with our planning department's zoning requirements for our plan, then that's where we ought to fix this perceived problem. And I'm not comfortable with members of this commission doling out this time and time again to judge the merits of a plan. If it's what we're supposed to do, then let's change the zoning ordinance. But I think it's a conflict of interest to do that here at the table. That being said, I support the idea of tabling this because there isn't a proper seal in place, which should be, and this should be handled in that manner, but I don't think we should solely reject it.
Mr. Casada?
I don't think we're punishing the petitioner at all. I think we're doing the petitioner a favor. What we're seeing here is an illegal act happening right before our eyes. The person here who presented this plan, who drew it, is not a licensed architect. He shouldn't be performing this service on a commercial building like this. It's required that the proper seals are required when you submit the plans to the government. The fact that the planning department has a policy to accept either seal is okay with me. I don't have a problem with that. And you know why? Because this commission is performing a gatekeeping function. And I don't know why this commission, which is required under the site plan review to consider the legalities, whether or not the plan meets all the applicable laws, which this one doesn't, because it's drawn and presented to the government illegally because it doesn't have the proper seals on it. I don't know why the city of Royal Oak would accept this sort of schlock, dishonest conduct from this petitioner. I don't think we're doing anything to hurt the building owner. The business owner should know this, and they should be understanding that they need to get a real architect or a real engineer or both. And that's good for the city, it's good for the petitioner. The only one it's not good for is the person who's acting illegally. And I think that's the perfectly good role for this commission.
Thank you, Mr. Casada. Ms. Douglas?
Mr. Twing, what's the cost to reapply, both in time and money?
Oh, well, it'd be $500 to reapply for a simple site plan review and approval. Time-wise, it's just a matter of when they can submit and meet deadlines to get on the next agenda.
Given that, I'm inclined to support this motion. I think that's an appropriate penalty for what they've done.
Any other discussion? Okay, I will not be supporting the motion. I think, I agree with our planning department, I agree with Mr. Twing. I think that we'd be best served as a community to postpone this to the next meeting. Unfortunately, the petitioner's in front of us tonight after getting a wrist slap from this commission, so that's not really our job up here, but I think you've obviously heard the tone and tenor of this commission, at least a few members. But I don't feel that we should be punishing this petitioner for that reason. I think what he did is wrong, or what his partner did is wrong, and they know that now. So I won't be supporting the motion. Any other discussion? So there's a motion by Mr. Casada and support by Mr. Chase to deny, reject this plan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No. So the motion passes to deny. 4-3. So the noes were,
Can we give the petitioner at least some instruction on how to come back again and, reapply? Tim, maybe?
They'll have to reapply with the appropriate seals, and they'll take the application, and we'll review it and put it back in front of you once that's done. The no's were,
Mayor Fournier,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Godek, and myself.
Fournier, Barra, and Skoda.
I would like to say too, we've had this discussion at this commission on other occasions. I think we need to follow carefully the role of this commission in terms of supporting the zoning ordinance and supporting the recommendations of our planning director. That's my opinion, and I will continue to act on behalf of the planning director at his direction, as long as we're following the zoning ordinance. So I just feel it's important to
well, I
say that.
appreciate that, but you don't have to follow my recommendations.
I do if I feel it's the best interest of the city of Royal Oak.
Yes, but I just wanted to make sure you don't have to.
Okay, so moving on to
Just
Mr.
a
Godek.
quick word on that. I don't want to belabor this, but I don't think we've cleared this up for me in terms of how to proceed in the future. In a future agenda, I don't know if we can have this clearly defined on the role of a planning commissioner and how he could appropriately decide on plans brought to us from the legal department and the planning commissioner themselves to, you've done well in explaining it meeting by meeting, but I just don't think we're working as a team up here in some cases.
Well, just for a little background, the city attorney's office and I have had some conversations. Hopefully in the nearest future, there will be an opinion or a report distributed to you on the current status and what you are and how you act and what we accept. And then potentially, if you want to revise the zoning ordinance to require something different, you can certainly recommend that, and we can deal with those provisions. So hopefully that'll be coming forward to you shortly. In the interim, as I said, we're going to continue to accept site plans, either from an architect or an engineer with the seal. And it's unfortunate this evening that the one we received and had on there was not a valid seal.
Commissioners, good evening. Just one comment. I know Mark List from our office has been working on this issue, who normally attends these meetings. And I would encourage, if you want to have more discussion, to schedule permitting to go ahead and put this on your agenda for next month. Because again, this is something that Mr. List has been working on. He's out on a medical leave right now. But for that fact, I think he would have had the opinion done for you today. So again, next month is what I would recommend, if your schedule allows.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gillum, appreciate it. Okay, next is other business. This is an extension of approval for site plan 170209 to construct a 6-story professional office building with the height of 62 feet to 96 feet, 7 inches at northwest corner of East 3rd Street and Knowles. Mr. Twain.
A little background. The zoning ordinance has a provision that says site plan approvals and planning commission actions are basically good for 1 year. They give petitioner 1 year to apply for and obtain a building permit. The majority of those that don't meet that deadline, and there are a substantial number, and there are a substantial number that never get built. But the majority of them don't formally ask for an extension. Staff simply deals with them when they come back in. If zoning ordinance provisions have changed, site circumstances have changed, surrounding has changed, and in a period of time have changed, we may bring them back to the planning commission, given the time that's gone by as well, for your further review or reapproval. The few that do ask for formal extension, you'll see the provision in the report that says the zoning administrator may grant an extension for site plan approval for good cause. In those cases, generally, we do ask the petitioner to provide us with some reasoning. You know, again, depending on the time period that's passed, what that reasoning is and what the delay is, and why they should be granted an extension. The majority of those are related to requests from lenders or investors rather than the applicant, meaning the investor or the lender has put some money out and they want to make sure that's still good. And so we've dealt with those administratively. In this particular case, you'll see that we've attached the reasoning from the petitioner, and I see the petitioner's here and he can get into his reasoning for it. I thought it was best to bring it for your consideration, given that the primary reasons listed had to do with development on other property rather than the property itself. And it's unlikely that, you know, the developments on those other properties are going to change since they've been approved and blessed at a variety of levels. And that the reasoning for that had to do with the elimination of parking, in the fact that the petitioner is also eliminating parking to build his own building that currently services other developments. Secondly, I think the Planning Commission members are aware of some ongoing litigation regarding some of your prior approvals, and I'm not sure what that ruling will ultimately come out on, but it involves another office building as well. And there is potential that, depending on how that goes, that we may suggest revisions either to the site plan review process and or the zoning ordinance regulations dealing with developments going forward in the CBD. So there's those types of things. Given those issues, I thought it was best to bring it back to you to see if there was anything that you would request from the petitioner in terms of parking studies, feasibility studies, or traffic studies, and whether or not the Planning Commission wanted extended for a short period of time or for another year as requested. So I thought this was best for you to discuss and decide how you wanted to approach the extension rather than staff dealing with it administratively. So if you've got questions, I'd be happy to address them, but the petitioner is here to address this request.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Twing, Mr. Casada?
Just generally, what's the downside of an extension? I mean, if there's nothing on the property and there's no other plans, I mean, just generally speaking from your experience, what's the downside?
Well, generally, if things change, if you grant a year's extension on a project that hasn't moved, hasn't obtained building permits, if something changes during that next year, you don't have an opportunity to make revisions or reconsider what you've granted for basically a 2-year period or a 1.5 year period. So the only extension is you've given them another year to move on.
Okay, thanks.
Is the petitioner here?
Good evening, Charles Simchin on behalf of Petitioner. And the site plan was approved a year ago. It was prepared by a licensed architect, Stuckey Vitale, and this was the rendering that accompanied the presentation at that time. I just wanted to show it to you again because not only was the plan approved unanimously, but there were comments about the attractiveness of this building and the materials, etc. It was viewed very favorably, and at least from my perception, by the Planning Commission at that time. And I don't know if the extension issue is really that complicated for the Planning Commission. I thought this could have been administratively approved. From what I've seen in the past with the good cause requirement that's in the ordinance section is cited in the memo 770-12, parent C5. You know, we're not here with a new site plan. There's no changes. It's the exact same site plan. It's the combination of financing through pre-leasing that comes into question with every office building. And while this project was in the works for 1.5 or 2 years before the site plan was approved, you know, it was proposed because of the city's desire to have office in the downtown area. There were other renderings that were presented to the city in that pre-approval period that had some mixed uses and residential, et cetera. And the developers decided to go forward with an office building. We had some level of excitement with the pre-leasing, which is always needed in order to obtain the financing. We have a full team of professionals involved. Gary Gerchowski from Colliers was the broker, and there was a lot of excitement. But as the plans for the city center development were unveiling during that course of time, that excitement diminished, especially at the point where in December the site plan was approved for the city hall. And you know, the reasons for that are explained in the writing that I put forward. It's basically the parking situation around there, because when the plan was approved, there was an ocean of parking surrounding the building, and now there won't be. And but in spite of that, the brokers want to continue to work on that. There's a new broker being brought in, and the investors want to continue and try to market the property. It's unsure if the property's value has been damaged. It seems like it has been taken away from the owners, but they want to try and see if they can put the pieces together and pre-lease this and have another year. And in one respect, the year kind of was wasted, and maybe with new brokers involved and new energy in the immediate area, maybe something will change. Maybe something will happen that stimulates some tenants to, sign up with some leases. So I don't think it's that complicated. There's no harm to anyone if the plan is extended for 1 year. And I was the one who recommended to the clients that they apply before their site plan expires. Now, it seems, when I read the ordinance, it seems like that's the way it should work, and even though I'm being told tonight that this could happen later. So we'd ask for another year to market the property. The causes for the delay are not attributable to anyone on our team. You know, they've done their pieces of the puzzle have been put together. It's external forces that are causing the need for another one-year extension. And I'm ready to answer any questions or rebut anything else that comes up.
Thank you. Mr. Chase?
Just out of curiosity, so you want the extension to move forward with this plan, so let's just say it's 11 months in and there's no action. Is there a thought as to what could happen after that, or?
Well, there's many things that can happen after that or even during that period. If interested parties come in and they would want, for example, a smaller amount of square footage, maybe, or a different type of plan, or we would come back and ask to amend. But right now, the comments we've had from the brokers and the industry is the plan's a really good plan. This is a really good building. It's what's happening around the building that's chilling out the tenants. So we want to try to go with this plan. And if we engage with the new brokers and find new clients and new tenants that want to try something different, we would come back immediately.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Just to clarify, Tim, they would have to come back if they wanted a smaller building or anything different than what was approved, they would have to come back, correct?
Well, not anything, but it depends on what it.
Sometimes minor amendments can be administratively approved. If it was major, we would come back.
Okay.
We would go through the process again. And we're hoping not to. We're hoping this works.
Any other questions? Mayor?
Yeah, regarding financing, do you have a valid letter of commitment from a bank?
No.
Okay. I think Mr. Chase answered my other question, so.
Ms. Douglas?
So I was not at the meeting where this plan was approved. I was on vacation, as I will be tomorrow, as I am right now. Just had to mention that.
You need to get a new vacation hobby.
At any rate, I'm actually surprised that a building of this height and mass was approved at this location. I find it attractive. I love the fact that an office building has balconies and outdoor space. I think that's a great feature. But when you think about a downtown, the idea of a downtown is that you have your taller buildings in the middle of the town or on main streets, and then your heights kind of tend to trickle down as you get to the outer edges of the CBD, which this is. And yet it winds up at 6 stories, being almost as tall as the main north building on a little cul-de-sac kind of next to a residential area. So you probably want to hope that you get this approval, because if you were coming back in front of me for another bite of the apple, I might be making the case that this wasn't a suitable profile for this area.
I understand, but we're not arguing the site plan.
I understand.
But it is step back on the residential side. There's a couple of step backs, and our view was to, because of the encouragement from the city's goals, was to build office space. So but things can change, and we need a year to see if we can go with this plan or come back and with something a little bit different. I don't know.
So are you finding that, now that the plans have settled, now that we know that you've got like 279 available parking spaces right, pretty much outside your door, is that helping you with your sales?
It's hard to say. The thing is chilled out pretty completely when we're getting the new broker involved. The comments coming back is it's not just the footprint of the buildings in the parking lot. There's going to be users of those buildings, off the city, people who work in the city hall, the police station, the visitors, where before it was very encouraging because the area was wide open, an ocean of parking, and the major competing interest for the parking was the farmer's market, which is Saturday and Sunday, the complete reciprocal use of the parking. So I don't know if I can say that this is encouraging, that we can succeed going forward, or if we'll continue to have frustration. But everyone on our end wants to try.
Well, I mean, because I just sort of did this research this afternoon, or actually yesterday, and it looks like, I mean, even with City Hall and staff and the police station kind of has their own parking area. I mean, I would think you should, I mean, you know, you've got, granted, people can't park right outside the door, but you should have a reasonable amount of parking, and it's set up actually for you know, day-long, for people who work in the area as well. And you're gonna have a beautiful downtown park, a block away.
That's true.
Any other questions? If none, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to extend, or
Go ahead.
extend the site plan for 1 year.
Okay.
Support.
So, motion by Mr. Chase, support by Mr. Godek. Any discussion on this motion to extend it for 1 year? Mayor?
Yeah, I appreciate the petitioner asking for another 12 months. I'll be supporting it, but I won't be supporting it for the reasons that have been outlined. So I think that we've seen an explosion of office use desirability in our downtown. I think that the Central Park, the availability of parking will be there. With the new garage going up, there'll be parking. I see if anything, real estate values are growing and interest is growing in the area. So I think if they need a little bit more time, it's a good plan. We like the plan. We should give them an option. There's no downside. Nothing has materially changed. From my recollection, prior to this even coming to this body for site plan approval, I mean, I remember with Dave Polton hanging out sweating in the room 309 there, looking at what options where we were going to put City Hall and the police station. And maybe, I don't know, Mr. Twing, Mr. Gillum, do you have, when did we actually approve the location of where the police station and City Hall were going to go? I remember we were talking about it for a while, but maybe we had a date before we did the site plan.
Yeah, discussions went on for a long time, but it was the end of January of 2017 that the city commission committed to City Hall and a police station east of Troy Street, if you will. So it was before site plan approval was granted for this particular office building, yes.
Yeah. So, you know, I think with that, knowing that, you know, that information was out there and certainly had been percolating for a year before that, maybe even a year and a half, when the first idea of the Civic Center project was being, you know, pondered. I think that I'm sure whatever that, you know, had a positive impact on the market then, and I don't, you know, see how, you know, the desirability to build this building would have been, you know, negatively or positively impacted either way, since that information was out there prior to site plan approval. So I think at a minimum, it's a status quo from when it was first approved. So if there's a business case before, there's a business case now. And I don't think that, it's not really that we've made any changes to the downtown area. I mean, those were all known when the petitioner brought this project to us. So I can't really support the reasoning that I see in the email here, but I do support the logic that the petitioner is putting a good faith effort into trying to, you know, establish a building here. And I think, just like we saw in the previous agenda item, you know, we should be helping out our petitioners when they need help to make sure that they can be successful. So if this is what they need to be successful, I'm very happy to support it.
Any other, yeah, Mr. Godek?
Obviously, I'll be supporting the motion, and I like the design when it was first brought to us, and I wish you success with it.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any other discussion? Okay, now seeing, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor to extend this petitioner's site plan for 12 months, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you. And for those who are tired, I'm tired too, and I left 2 hours earlier than you guys got done last night.
Okay, the final item on our agenda is a public hearing. It's a capital improvement program for 2018-19 fiscal year, Mr. Twain.
I don't really have any formal presentation here. We discussed it at the time prior to, and hopefully over the last month or so that you had a chance to look at the capital improvement program as put together by the city's finance department with input from all the various city departments. As part of your normal action, the planning commission would be the body that would hold a public hearing on the capital improvement program to solicit any input, and then provide that along to the city commission.
Any questions for Mr. Twing? Or any discussion or a motion?
Well, the public hearing.
Or public hearing, I'm sorry. Any questions for Mr. Twing? Not seeing any, open the public hearing. Is there somebody here that would like to make a comment on the capital improvement program? Okay, not seeing, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission for discussion or a motion. Ms. Douglas?
Move approval?
Support.
Moved by Ms. Douglas, supported by Mr. Chase. Any discussion on the motion to approve?
Just
Ms. Douglas,
want
yes.
to say, there are a lot of communities around Michigan that don't do a capital improvement program, and we've had one for a number of years. And now the professional planners in particular and municipalities are really pushing all communities to develop one of these. We should pat ourselves on the back that we've been doing this so successfully for so long. Attaboy.
Ms. Douglas,
And girl.
appreciate that.
I'd like to say, the finance department does a great job preparing this. It's very straightforward, so it's easy to read.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Approved. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Chairman?
Yes.
With the discussion that we spoke about on zoning, can we rely on having something for the next meeting to discuss, or could that?
Well, I'll add it to the agenda. As long as the attorney's office has something to present, we'll
Okay,
have that conversation.
thank you.
Great.
Thank you,
Okay,
sorry.
yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up, that's good. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Godek, supported by Mr. Chase. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned.